This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the course of the hour, we'll run through the business and economic news stories you need to know about from the continent and beyond. But first, a quick run through the markets. MTN, as you'll hear a little later in the bulletin, intends to float roughly 20% of its Ugandan subsidiary, the most recent of its subsidiaries, of which non-controlling sections are being listed. Now, the sale could raise around $300 million, while breaking an IPO drought that's lasted for years within the region. Shares in the parent firm at the JSE have gone up by a fairly significant margin over the course of the year, 130% in 9 months. In the US, Facebook shares did close about 5% lower yesterday, but they've clawed back some of those losses today, up 2.2% at 17:10 GMT. Here's what's coming up tonight. The Facebook CEO, Mark Zuckerberg's fortunes take a hit after a 6-hour-long glitch affecting the social media company's platforms. South Africa's biggest engineering metal workers union starts a nationwide strike. And in the wake of the Pandora Papers, 9 countries are opening probes into politicians and high net worth individuals after this exposé. Our starting point at this hour is in Uganda. The mobile telecommunications operator MTN Uganda has announced its intent to float 20% of its shares on the country's securities exchange. Now, this will potentially be the largest initial public offering on the Ugandan market. Here's CGTN's Michael Baleke with that report.
The initial public offering is expected to raise about $1.3 billion. MTN says the offer and listing of the mobile telecom company is in line with MTN Group's localization strategy to drive local ownership in the markets within which the company operates.
We want every individual, every customer to be part and parcel of what we are going to be doing, which is we want them to own a piece of this company.
The mobile telecom operator is present in 21 markets, but MTN Uganda will become the 4th operating market to be publicly listed. Uganda's Capital Markets Authority says the IPO is expected to double the amount of money the capital markets has raised since it was established in 1998, a move expected to grow the economy and create more jobs.
More Ugandans will be able to open and use bank accounts. More Ugandans will be able to open and use mobile money accounts, to use insurance products, and to save for investment and retirement.
The decision by MTN to list is also in line with the policy objectives of the government of Uganda, which require all telecom companies with a national operator's license to list at least 20% of their shares. This follows complaints by the Ugandan president that foreign-owned telecoms are draining the country's scarce foreign exchange reserves through repatriating their profits abroad. The Ugandan leader believes listing on the stock exchange will keep some of the money in the economy. The Uganda Securities Exchange says the MTN initial public offering will be delivered primarily through a digital paperless platform launched recently.
Technology has a big impact on the potential of the markets and also ease of access to the markets by letting everybody at any corner of the country to be able to open an account seamlessly.
MTN Uganda has more than 15 million subscribers and also offers mobile money financial services. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
The World Bank is urging low and middle income countries to consider restructuring their debt when the debt service suspension initiative expires in the next 3 months. This is so that they can sustain the economic recovery amidst the pandemic. The bank says over half of the world's poorest countries are now in external debt distress, and the situation could worsen if commodity prices are volatile, interest rates go up, or investors lose confidence in emerging markets altogether. Now, the bank says when the DSSI expires at the end of the year, low-income countries will resume debt service payments, and that could reduce the fiscal space and limit the ability to buy vaccines and finance other priority expenditures. A total of 73 countries are eligible for a temporary suspension of debt service payments due to their official bilateral creditors. Sudan's government is warning of a looming shortage of essential medicine and strategic goods, and that includes food, after protesters blocked main transport routes for imports. For the past few weeks, protesters in eastern Sudan have been blocking the movement of supplies from the main port on the Red Sea coast in the city of Port Sudan in order to pressure the government in Khartoum to implement a number of political demands. They've been demonstrating against what they describe as the deteriorating political and economic conditions in the region. A statement issued by the Sudanese cabinet on Sunday said preventing transport of essential medicines and goods is a crime against millions of citizens. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg is thought to have lost about $6 billion from his personal fortune after the hours-long outage of services that affected over 3.5 billion users worldwide. Zuckerberg did issue an apology after the internal technical issue took Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp and Instagram offline at about 1600 GMT on Monday. The scramble to bring it back online eventually did succeed some 6 hours later. Now, for hours, potentially billions of people around the world were without the social media tools that they've relied upon for so many years now to keep in touch with friends and family and even run their businesses. African business owners who depend on social media, especially SMEs, to drive sales and engage with clients, are counting their losses incurred during that 6-hour outage. The internet monitoring firm NetBlocks estimated that the outage could have cost the sub-Saharan economy some $19 million. Let's jump into our company news wrap, starting in Uganda. The national carrier over there, Uganda Airlines, has started to run direct flights to Dubai, the first intercontinental flight for the carrier since it was revamped and relaunched some 2 years ago. This comes after the UAE took Uganda off its red list last month, allowing the carrier to proceed with plans to fly to Dubai. Dubai is important for both formal and informal trade for Uganda. The East African nation is looking to tap into that demand for traders traveling to the Middle and the Far East. A tribunal set up to recover looted funds has ruled that over $762,000 held in a bank account linked to a suspended senior ESCOM manager be forfeited to the state. Special Tribunal Judge Tina Siwendu ruled that Petros Mazibuko, a suspended senior manager in the power utilities coal operations, his brother Shadrach and their company broke the law in accepting bribes. Siwendu ruled that all the funds in that particular bank account be immediately transferred to the Special Investigating Unit. And AstraZeneca has requested emergency use authorization from U.S. regulators for its new treatment to prevent COVID-19 for people who respond poorly to vaccines because of a weakened or compromised immune system. The antibody therapy is called AZD7442. It could protect people who do not have strong enough immune response to COVID-19 vaccines or to supplement a vaccination course for those like military personnel who need to boost their protection even further. And finally, Windows 11, the latest version of Microsoft's operating system, rolls out worldwide on Tuesday as a free upgrade for Windows 10 users with the hardware that's required for that. The Windows Chief Product Officer, Pandora Papers, says that the latest version is built to be clean and fresh and simpler for the user. He promised that the new OS would not be an extreme departure from what people know, and even the least tech-savvy among us can upgrade relatively easily. That's a run through your company headlines. You're watching Global Business Africa. Time for a short break. Here's what's coming up. South Africa's biggest engineering metalworkers union starts a nationwide strike. And Zimbabwe is partnering with Huawei in a major network upgrade project. The details coming up next.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question.
What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sudan. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back to the program. Let's head over to Zimbabwe. The country's aspirations to develop a digitally driven and knowledge-based economy have gotten a bit of a boost with implementation of the third phase of a national mobile broadband project. As CGTN's Farai Mukutuye now reports, the Chinese-funded project aims to significantly improve the country's ICT infrastructure.
Chinese ICT giant Huawei is partnering Zimbabwe's state-run mobile network operator Net1 to install 345 new base stations, improve 4G LTE coverage and introduce 5G technology to a nation that sees information communication technology as crucial.
This strategic project gives impetus to the digitally enabled industrialization and the growth of our economy. The project will undoubtedly help improve economic efficiencies, production and productivity across our economic sectors.
A $71 million facility from China's Exim Bank is funding the expansion. The availability of the latest information communication technology is a catalyst not just for economic growth, but also the attainment of key social development goals. Upon completion, Net1's coverage will increase to 85% of the country, including some previously unserviced remote areas.
The data actually suggests that there's a massive business opportunity even in rural communities because as we are all aware of, the majority of internet users in Zimbabwe access it through their mobile phones. And this is inclusive of rural communities where we also have an increasingly young population. There's a young demographic that has a huge appetite for all forms of multimedia, which are accessed through the internet. Accessing information that relates to agriculture, which is a huge component of the Zimbabwean rural space, as well as education, which has emerged as a huge driver of internet usage over the past year and a half because of what happened with COVID-19.
According to the industry regulator, Zimbabwe experienced a 29.9% increase in mobile internet and data traffic during the first quarter of 2021, with over 90% of users accessing the internet via their mobile phones. The figures are expected to grow as e-learning and working from home become more popular, which makes the now underway network upgrade a key priority. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure program, the Belt and Road Initiative, is targeting and networking large parts of Africa, East Asia and Europe, and is beginning to attract travel interest from G7 countries: Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the U.S. Now, collectively, they plan to offer other nations that want to improve their infrastructure an alternative to partnering with China. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza is in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. He sat down with Olawale Rashid, CEO of the African Railway Consulting Limited and director of the African Rail Roundtable, to discuss the progress and the impact of the BRI.
My first question, sir, will be, for the benefit of doubt, why does Africa, and especially Nigeria, require a massive rail and road network?
Africa is largely underdeveloped. And secondly, the infrastructural deficit is so high. So we need rail, road, and the hard infrastructure. One, to interconnect the landlocked countries. Because if you don't interconnect them, then trading will be so low, prosperity will be so low. Then we also need to connect the capital cities together. And three, we need to improve on inter- and intra-African trade. And so as for Nigeria, you see, Nigeria is the biggest economy on the continent. So by the time you connect north to south, not just through road, which is difficult to maintain, but through rail, and you connect east to west, you are indirectly expanding Nigeria's influence economically.
Okay, so currently, where are we with the plans to connect the states in Nigeria and, of course, the country to the rest parts of the continent?
For Nigeria, I think the current government has done marvelously well, especially in terms of rail and even road. Major rail projects have been handled. But I think the government still have it in mind to interconnect around 10 states, I think. As to the continental level, almost all African governments now, across the regional blocks, have one railway project or the other. In fact, there is a silent railway revolution across Africa.
So at the moment, there are quite a number of initiatives proposed by the U.S., the U.K. and EU, which seem to rival the BRI and China, projects in Africa. Do you think these initiatives are realistic?
Competing with BRI is also good for Africa, where the fine bright, let's East and West bring resources to develop Africa, because when you develop Africa, you develop the world. But as to comparing the two, I think BRI has a lot of advantage over the new plan. For one, the new plan being developed by G7 is still in the pipeline. They have to sort out the funding question. Where would the funding come from? They have to sort out the implementation framework, which is still ongoing. And any true friend of Africa now should know that what we need is bridges, roads, ports, power plants, ICT, infrastructure, and others.
So my last question will be, there are a couple of claims that the projects or interest from China in Nigeria, in countries in Africa, and of course the continent, they lack accountability and transparency, and they're plunging these countries or the continent into huge debts. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, my take about it, in 3 ways. The first one is you have to look at the geopolitical questions across the world. So, of course, China and the West, the rivalry. So you are likely to have issue of one accusation after the other against China. Second one is that at national level, you have political questions. People have issues with current government. So definitely you play politics with infrastructure. That is. But the last one I have is this. Are we truly in debt crisis? The loans are tied to projects. And we can see Lagos, Ibadan, SGR have boarded it. And to be fair, it's a fantastic job. Any funding that we invested on infrastructure is worth it. Because one, it will boost the economy, and of course it will pay itself off eventually.
Thank you so much, sir, for doing this interview. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege talking to CGTN. We thank you.
On to South Africa now. Members of the country's biggest engineering metalworkers union have started a nationwide strike on the 5th of October. Now, the strike is a result of a deadlock between the union and employers in talks over salary hikes. The union is looking for an 8% across-the-board wage rise in the first year of a pay deal and an increase equal to inflation plus 200 basis points for the following 2 years. However, according to a statement released by the National Union of Metal Workers, employers are offering something very different, a 4.4% hike for this year, inflation plus 50 basis points for 2022 and inflation plus 100 basis points for the third year. Headline consumer inflation in Africa's most industrialized economy was up to 4.9% year-on-year in the month of August. In the meantime, many companies still in South Africa are pushing to develop their own generation capacity due to the persistent unreliability of the country's national utility, Eskom. They plan to spend nearly $3 billion developing some 2 gigawatts of renewable power in order to supplement what they can buy from Eskom. Here's CGTN's Angela Coppola with the details.
The mining sector supported renewables and the development of green hydrogen as a fuel for this energy-intensive industry. But what impact will these investments have on listed mining stocks?
Even if they were to go for 100, let's just say hypothetically, they were to go 100% self-reliant in terms of power capabilities, but commodity prices fell through the floor. Unfortunately, the investment community would be focused on commodity prices. So I do think that end of the day, commodity prices are the real driver of long-term market caps or share prices, but that's not to take away from the importance of this. This is obviously still very important.
Power is a key component in the mining sector, and it's one of the biggest operating costs.
And we consume in excess of 700 megawatts on a daily basis, which equates to over 7 billion rand, or about 3% of national sales. Eskom's supply to us is predominantly coal-based, and as a result of that, we have an extensive carbon footprint.
Other mining houses are also concerned about consistent power supply in the future.
We're worried about tomorrow's risk, and specifically mid-decade, we think that the country does have a looming supply risk problem, somewhere around 2024, 2025, and we're actually becoming quite concerned about it, more so than we have been historically, in terms of Eskom's ability to meet demand.
Some mines like Northern Platinum had decided to generate a portion of their own power before government changed the maximum generation capacity from 10 to 100 megawatts.
The furthest progressed is our 50 megawatt project southwest of Johannesburg, and that project has an identified site that's fully permitted, and we're hoping to reach financial close mid next year and then begin construction straight thereafter. That plant should come into commercial operation at the end of 2023.
Mining houses take a holistic view about power supply.
It's not just about reducing our carbon footprint, it is actually trying to reduce somewhat our reliance on Eskom in totality. But we are very conscious of the fact that we can't replace Eskom, we can only supplement.
The mining sector is one of the biggest energy users in the country, and with its move to self-generation, it's going to free Eskom up to look after the rest of the country. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A new report from the World Bank is warning that climate change could push more than 200 million people out of their homes in the next 3 decades and create migration hotspots. And that is unless urgent action is taken to reduce global emissions and to bridge the development gap. Countries in North Africa, Tunisia included, are forecast to have the largest proportion of climate migrants, mainly due to increased water scarcity. Here's CGTN's Adin Chouachi taking up the story.
At 35, Saber has already lived in different areas in northwestern Tunisia, where water is not always available. He's living under constant water-stressed conditions. Despite his handicap, Saber walks for miles to get fresh water from a natural source in the mountain. This is a difficult undertaking, but still possible in the summer and autumn seasons. However, it will be impossible in the next few weeks. That's because in winter, even a donkey cannot cross the distance to get fresh water due to the hostile weather conditions in this mountainous region.
My name is Sabir. It means patience in our dialect. My parents knew that I would spend most of my life looking for water. I'm always searching for water. I know so many people who migrated to other regions. I'm sure my family is next. It's our turn to follow the water.
Sabir is an unemployed single man who's still living with his elderly parents. His daily task is to get drinking water from new sources when the precious commodity is no longer flowing in his region. Sabir's mother and father do not want to leave their house again. However, they could be forced to look for a new dwelling when nature is more hospitable and water available.
The public water installation, the pipes and water fittings are useless because I don't have water at home. I'm old and sick. I cannot leave my house to look for water. Life is impossible without water.
I only think of water when I sleep and wake up. I'm being pushed out of my area because water is scarce. I just want water. I don't need anything else.
Water levels in Tunisian dams have dropped significantly. By 16th of September, they stood at 722.8 million cubic meters. The monthly bulletin of the National Observatory of Agriculture has revealed that water stock in Tunisian dams has declined to 730 million cubic meters in the first 2 weeks of September, against 1,095 million cubic meters during the same period of 2020.
Climate change has affected everyday life for many people in the cities and in remote areas. Nature and the environment and human beings are the first victims. Rain and water scarcity led to unprecedented decline in the water reserves at the dams. We're in the midst of the rainy season, but we've only recorded high temperatures and drought.
According to the Ministry of Agriculture and Water Resources, the storage capacity of Tunisian dams is about 2.3 billion cubic meters. This level is declining due to drought. Tunisia is faced with the challenge of regression of dam water used for both consumption and agriculture. Water scarcity and climate change in Tunisia are pushing thousands of people, especially farmers, to leave their regions and abandon their activity. Environmental activists assert that the North African state could face worse or even extreme climatic conditions over the next decade. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
On to Uganda now. The coronavirus pandemic has forced many teachers to find alternative jobs in order to earn a living, even as the world commemorates World Teachers' Day. Schools in the country have been shut down for over a year now, and teachers who've not been able to take up roles in offering online tutoring say life for them has become quite challenging. Isabel Nakiria has their stories from Kampala.
Madina Nansuga hoped she would be a nursery school teacher by now, but she's currently selling food as a street vendor. She was due to graduate in March last year when the country suddenly shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic.
I was booked by 2 schools. After the graduation, I was going to get paid. I was going to start my life.
Madina now helps her mother, who cooks food in a market in Kawempe outside Kampala. But life on the streets has been tough on her.
These customers, most especially men, they are so disrespectful. At times you have to even use vulgar language.
Uganda is set to reopen higher institutions of learning in November, and primary and secondary schools will resume classes in January next year. But the government still has no plans to restart learning in nursery schools.
I miss teaching. I miss babies because most especially at school, I like teaching baby class. You see how children learn to hold a pencil, write the first word, the first letter.
The Ministry of Education says full reopening will take place after 550,000 teachers have been vaccinated. Only about 19% of teachers in Uganda have been fully vaccinated, but there is no definite timeline on when the exercise will be complete. This is causing a lot of uncertainty on when some teachers will be able to report back. Madina has received her first dose of the vaccine and is waiting to get her second jab. The government has also disbursed about $6 million to support teachers' saving groups to start income-generating activities.
It is this association that is supposed to engage with the Microfinance Support Center to determine the what, the who, and how. How much should a certain teacher circle get? Who should qualify as a beneficiary? And what are the guidelines of accessing that?
For now, Madina relies on selling food support herself, and she has no idea when she will get back into the classroom. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
It's now 18:30 GMT, time for a short break. Here's what's coming up next. Nine countries will open probes into politicians and high net worth individuals after the exposé on the dark world of tax havens. And the Biden administration says it will have frank conversations with China over trade policies. The details coming up next.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Welcome back. Let's run through some of the stories making you headlines at this hour. Starting in South Africa, where the country's power utility Eskom has been ranked as the world's most polluting power company when it comes to sulfur dioxide emissions. According to data analysis by the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, Eskom's emissions are worse than that of other power sectors of the US, the European Union, even China. The data was published on Tuesday. It applies to the 2019 and 2020 fiscal years. Officials in South Sudan say about 35 people have been killed in ethnic clashes in the north of the country. Around 80 others have been wounded in the fighting between the Luakjang, Peak and Luapaher people in Warab state. It's not clear exactly what sparked the latest violence, but communities in the region often raid cattle from each other. Thousands have died in similar ethnic clashes in South Sudan in recent years. The World Health Organization has pledged to undertake organizational reforms to address issues of sexual abuse in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A recent report by an independent commission of inquiry set up by the WHO acknowledged more than 80 alleged cases of sexual abuse implicating some 20 WHO employees in the DRC. And finally, Egypt's Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry has outlined a 6-point plan to help complete Libya's ongoing political reconciliation. In the plan, which was revealed at the UN General Assembly recently, Egypt also wants the African Union to play a much bigger role in curbing the flow of mercenaries into Central and Northern Africa. That's a run through your headlines. On to the business of assets held offshore. At least 9 countries around the world have announced investigations into the finances of high-profile politicians, high-net-worth individuals and institutions. All of this, remember, is in reaction to the biggest leak of offshore data in history. Here's CGTN's Jim Spellman reporting on the project, shining a light into the dark world of tax havens.
They've been dubbed the Pandora Papers, a massive haul of documents that show secret accounts, mansions, yachts, and other holdings linked to more than 300 current and former political leaders from around the world. The documents were released by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, a group made up of more than 600 journalists from 150 media outlets in more than 100 countries.
We're looking at about 12 million documents from 14 different service providers. These are law firms, firms that set up secret offshore accounts for people in multiple jurisdictions.
The ICIJ calls it the largest investigation in journalism history.
What they boil down to, though, are emails, spreadsheets, contracts, secret ledgers. I mean, these are the private communications in many cases between elite, wealthy individuals and their financial managers and the offshore companies that set them up with shell companies and trusts to help them hide their money.
The papers connect politicians and political parties from the UK, Russia, Jordan, the Czech Republic, and other countries to billions of dollars held in accounts around the world, including in the United States. The publication of the Pandora Papers has triggered a series of denials, explanations, and accusations.
The only thing that catches the eye is a demonstration of which country is the world's largest offshore tax haven. This, of course, is the United States.
Many of these accounts are probably legal, set up to minimize taxes, but are they fair?
It is a matter of fairness for everybody to pay taxes, especially at difficult budgetary times, such as those where we are.
And though many of these accounts are likely legal, they may present political perception problems for some of the leaders implicated.
Just the very, very wealthy in moving money and hiding money in ways that the rest of us simply can't or don't tend to do.
The political fallout from these papers will likely continue for weeks or months as more details are uncovered. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Bethesda, Maryland.
On to bilateral trade now between China and the United States. The US says it will soon have frank conversations with China. During a speech at the Washington-based think tank, the CSIS, US Trade Representative Catherine Tai said the objective of the talks is not to inflame trade tensions yet again. Nathan King has the details from Washington.
After a months-long review of U.S.-China trade policy, the Biden administration's new trade policy towards Beijing seems a lot like the last policy. Tariffs of up to 25% on $360 billion worth of Chinese imports will stay, at least for now, but US businesses that depend on Chinese parts will be able to apply for wider exemptions.
We will start a targeted tariff exclusion process. We will ensure that the existing enforcement structure optimally serves our economic interests. We will keep open the potential for additional exclusion processes as warranted.
What is new is that talks will resume, though no date was given, and that the Biden administration says it will push China to deliver on its purchases and other commitments under the Phase 1 trade deal.
But our analysis indicates that while commitments in certain areas have been met, that certain business interests have seen benefits, there have also been shortfalls in others. But the reality is, this agreement did not meaningfully address the fundamental concerns that we have with China's trade practices.
Tai also said that the US will challenge China on its state support for industries, specifically for semiconductors and artificial intelligence and other industries of the future. This comes as Washington is poised to step up state support for the very same industries. Unlike the Trump administration, Tai said her team will focus on bringing more allies into the process, even though partners in the European Union, like France and Germany, have very different trade policies towards Beijing and are not part of the Phase 1 trade deal. Also, the US trade representative did not mention COVID and the obvious disruption it had on the trade agreement. For its part, China has always maintained that for trade relations to improve, then tariffs should be lifted first, especially now as the global economy is struggling to recover from the pandemic and price rises create inflationary pressures, and also there are pressures on global supply chains. The silver lining of these announcements from the US trade representative, however, is that it looks like discussions, if not negotiations, will resume with their Chinese counterparts soon. That could help improve the climate of relations between the two countries. Nathan King, CGTN, Washington.
European finance ministers are meeting in Luxembourg to discuss solutions to an energy crisis brewing in Europe. Now, that meeting comes as energy prices in the EU soared to record highs last week. There also are fears that these rising costs could hinder the post-pandemic recovery and have a major impact on inflation. Giles Gibson has the details from Brussels.
Yeah, that's right. And these rising energy prices, of course, are coming at the worst possible time because as we head into those colder winter months, that's exactly when people use more energy, use more gas to actually heat their homes. Last week, we saw Dutch gas futures breaking this symbolic barrier of €100 per megawatt hour. We also understand that gas storage levels across Europe are just much lower this year than they have been in previous years. And as Pascal Donoghue, the Irish finance minister, who's also chairing this meeting in Luxembourg, acknowledged as he went into this meeting, 2020 and the winter of 2020 was also a really tough time for Europe. And of course, rising energy prices are also a big driver of inflation going up as well. And just in September, we actually saw inflation for the Eurozone hitting a 13-year high. The energy prices and gas prices really overlap with a lot of really complex, really complicated long-term issues between member states in the European Union. You know, questions about whether, for example, Europe is just too reliant on Russia for its natural gas supplies, whether decarbonisation and the EU's new big climate push could potentially actually push up energy prices in the medium term. Meanwhile, in the short term, we are already seeing countries across Europe taking action to try to protect consumers from these rising energy prices. We saw the French government, the French Prime Minister announcing that they're going to be freezing electricity and natural gas prices. And we've also seen Spain saying that they're going to cut energy taxes last month. So the big question really is, coming out of this meeting, are we going to see any sort of coordinated action at the European level as well?
Venezuelans are getting used to some easier math after a new rebranded currency went into circulation with 6 fewer zeros than the previous one. This is the third redenomination of the local bolivar since 2008, and that's a direct result of years of some of the highest inflation rates in the world. Stephen Gibbs has this report from Caracas.
A new day and some new price tags at this vegetable market in Caracas. Last week, all these figures were in millions. But since the government locked 6 zeros off the country's currency, what was 1 million has become 1. That makes the numbers more manageable for now.
It makes work simpler, the accountancy, payments, even just writing down the numbers. Our customer service should be better because there will be fewer buttons to press.
This currency relaunch is a symptom of years of inflation. A total of 14 zeros have been removed from Venezuelan banknotes since 2008. The hope is this currency, called the digital bolivar, might just last a little longer than its predecessor, the sovereign bolivar, which was launched in 2018. One key change is that for the last 2 years, the government has allowed businesses to use the US dollar, a move which has helped stabilise prices and reduce demand for local banknotes. That's a relief for the government, which at one stage was struggling to pay for its own money, most of which was printed abroad.
By including the word digital in the name of these new notes, the central bank here is indicating it doesn't necessarily intend to issue that many of them in their physical form.
The idea is to encourage people to switch to entirely digital forms of payment.
The introduction of the digital bolivar is likely to incrementally reduce the proportion of cash in circulation and therefore bring down the printing costs for the central bank.
Meanwhile, millions of Venezuelans have ceased to be millionaires overnight. And in this unusual economy, that's seen as a good thing. Stephen Gibbs, CGTN, Caracas.
Pandemic restrictions have made recreational vehicles a lot more popular in China, as travelers are looking for safe ways to work away from home, but also to see new places. On What's Hot tonight, CGTN's Wang Siwen takes us on an RV road trip as the self-contained homes on wheels continue to fly off the showroom floors.
It's just another day for the Li family. They've lost count of the times they've been on the road. And they've traveled 90,000 kilometers by RV across 31 provinces and regions and 32 countries.
Our vehicle has a living room area with the sofa here, and a kitchen area, and a bathroom. For the bedrooms, there's a vertical bed, and the other one is on top of the driving area.
Self-sufficient and the freedom to go anywhere. That's increasingly appealing to Chinese travelers.
Because of the pandemic, we can't go anywhere. Recreational vehicles give us the freedom to go anywhere. We don't need to worry about booking hotels or getting up late. It gives us a lot of flexibility and saves a lot of money.
There is a growing interest in this form of travel. Last year, there were 27 million internet searches for RV travel on Chinese websites, 48% more than 2019. The sales of recreational vehicles hit another record, almost 70,000 units last year. China now has about 1,400 large RV campsites, and the number continues to rise. Campsite owners started to offer more holiday packages tailored for the RV.
There are 3,000 to 5,000 people during this national holiday, double the number for a normal weekend. For long-term RV camping customers, we offer special deals tailored for a week or a month. The RV industry will be a huge market in the future, with recreational vehicles being a family's second car. The first one for transport and the second for travel.
The pandemic has affected the tourism industry, but cannot stop people from pursuing a good life. And now the Li family is already planning their next trip. Wang Siwen, CGTN, Beijing.
All right, then a quick run through commodity prices. This one's going to be a bit grim. Brent and WTI crude, they continue rising unabated today. The former, in fact, has gone as high as $83.13 a barrel in today's trading session. Yesterday, gains of 63%. WTI crude, that's closing in on the $80 a barrel level, having gone up to as high as $78.90. At these levels, Brent is back to where it was 7 years ago. And it's not just oil prices that are rising steeply. The Bloomberg Spot Commodities Index, that combines prices from 23 crops, metals, energy contracts, that broke through a record set in 2011. It's at an all-time high. This year alone, it's gone up by over 47%. Here's what's coming up next. We'll explore how businesses in South Africa are adopting to e-commerce platforms in order to increase their sales.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Syria, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. Online food and grocery deliveries rocketed through the roof in the early stages of South Africa's pandemic restrictions. Now, it slowed down somewhat as these restrictions ease, but it does still remain a popular choice for consumers. As CGTN's Julie Shai now reports, the unprecedented growth in e-commerce is now forcing businesses to adapt and become a lot more innovative.
Flavour & Co was a fledgling business selling prepared meals and fresh produce when South Africa went into a hard lockdown in March 2020.
Lockdown was quite good to us initially. I think there was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to people thinking that they couldn't go out and get their meals and so on. So we grew quite rapidly during that period. That was probably March, April last year.
The phenomenal growth enabled the Johannesburg startup to expand its product range and introduce a virtual market.
We wanted to give people an experience of being able to go shopping. So online, you literally walk down the high street and pop into the dairy or the baker or the fishmonger or the butcher or the deli. So that's the kind of experience that we've created. So we've created a marketplace and literally people can buy almost anything from fresh vegetables to fish.
With people confined to their homes, online grocery shopping also spiked.
Retailers were forced to up their service levels, and we saw that in the grocery arena where 60-minute delivery suddenly became an expectation from consumers thanks to Check and C60, and that forced all the other retailers to embrace a similar approach. Now, that transformed the industry.
While the pandemic lingers and a curfew still in place, shopping and eating out are barely back at pre-lockdown levels. Many South Africans are still opting to stay home and get their food delivered to them to minimize contact with the outside world. For restaurants, however, takeaways did little to stem massive losses caused by erratic curfews and a string of alcohol bans. But as restrictions ease, that may change.
Are affected quite heavily by restaurants opening up and lockdown being lessened and so on. People do tend to go back to restaurants and the takeaways. I know that restaurants try to do the delivery story, but a lot of our customers tried that and then came back to us and said, they're not really geared for takeaways.
E-commerce showed an unprecedented 66% growth in 2020 and is expected to remain robust for the rest of 2021. The country has moved back to level 1, bringing hope that the economy will soon pick up. Judy Shire, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
One last story for you. Over 500 Tunisian professionals have taken part in an exhibition of creative craft work that started on Friday. The event, which had been delayed twice due to the pandemic, will now run for 10 days in the suburbs of Tunis. It's been organised by the National Board of Handicrafts. Adin Chouachi was there.
Tunisian craftsmen and craftswomen who specialize in outdoor decoration and painted wood, as well as students of schools of arts and crafts, are participating in this 37th edition of the exhibition. The event offers young artisans the opportunity to display their work.
I'm a specialist in brassware, which is an ancestral technique mixed with lighting. This craftsmanship is well known in Tunisia, Morocco and Algeria. I'm exhibiting new designs. Our region is witnessing the revival of this art form. Clients can discover and buy artworks.
It's a pleasure to be back to exhibitions because these events were interrupted in the past 2 years due to the coronavirus crisis. I hope that this fair will give artisans reasons to return to work. Many companies, craftswomen and craftsmen lost their jobs and markets. Now, it's time to resume our activities.
More than 200,000 people are expected to visit this annual exhibition in the suburbs of the capital city Tunis.
Coming to this exhibition is an exceptional experience. I'm here to encourage Tunisian craftsmanship and craft skills which are under threat of extinction with the modernization of industry. Buying directly from artisans helps them financially and shows the world Tunisia's great handmade artifacts and culture. Gathering the best artisans in one place is a good marketing initiative.
The Creative Artworks exhibition has also attracted foreign visitors and tourists who can buy different kinds of handmade products and gifts, as well as souvenirs from Tunisia.
I revisited Tunisian clothing. I love decorations, especially the creations in glass and wood. This is an exceptional exhibition. I really like everything.
Well, it's very surprising to see so many things collected in one place. And what I found very interesting is that it's more handmade things and very traditional.
According to the trade and health departments, only vaccinated people are allowed to visit the exhibition. A vaccination center was set up with 10,000 doses for visitors who wish to get vaccinated. Over 5,000 rapid tests were also made available for visitors and exhibitors.
The Creative Artworks exhibition is designed to boost the strategic sector of handicrafts, which provides more than 400,000 jobs in Tunisia. According to the Ministry of Tourism and Handicrafts, this event provides more than 50% of the annual revenue for craftspeople. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
A quick run through the currencies as we wrap up the program. So the Naira is still pretty close on to its low point on the formal FX market in today's session, around 413.27, which is relatively close to the 413.53 that we've seen essentially on the top end. On a year-to-date basis, the currency is around 3.6% weaker against the dollar on the formal market. On the parallel one, it's a much different story. Abiy Ahmed Ali, of course, as you saw a little earlier in the hour, sworn in as Ethiopia's prime minister, but he comes into office at a time of crisis. The currency, the birr, that has lost 20% of its value this year alone. Barely a week ago, the country was downgraded to CCC+ by S&P with a negative outlook. To be fair, there's a creditor panel in place to work out how to restructure the country's debt. We'll update you on exactly what decisions come out of that on the program. For now, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the content you've seen on the program in the last hour. Many ways to get your thoughts and your feedback back to us, all of them on your screens right now. I'm Ramah Nyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thank you for your company in the last hour. Well, today's up next from Washington, D.C.